Welcome to Outside Views Politics 101. Today we're tackling a topic that has shaped the course of history, driven political movements, and continues to influence global affairs, and that's nationalism. Few ideas have been as powerful, as controversial, or as enduring as nationalism. It has been both a force for unity and liberation, and a source of division and conflict. But what exactly is nationalism? Where does it come from? And how has it shaped the political landscape of the modern world? Let's take a deep dive into the origins, evolution, and impact of nationalism. At its core, nationalism is the belief that a group of people with a shared identity, whether based on culture, language, ethnicity, or history, should be politically united as a nation. It is the idea that nations are the fundamental units of political organization and that they should have sovereignty over their own affairs. In other words, nationalism is the driving force behind the creation, maintenance, and sometimes even expansion of nations and nation-states. The roots of nationalism stretch back centuries, but as a political force, it began to take shape in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The American and French revolutions played a crucial role in shaping modern nationalism. Both revolutions emphasized the idea of popular sovereignty, the belief that political authority comes from the people rather than from a monarch or a religious institution. The French Revolution in particular transformed nationalism into a mass movement, with citizens rallying around the idea of a unified French nation. This was a radical departure from the old feudal order, where loyalty was often tied to a local ruler rather than a national identity. As nationalism spread across Europe in the 19th century, it became a driving force behind the formation of modern nation-states. Italy and Germany, for example, were fragmented territories before nationalism brought about their unification. Leaders like Giuseppe Garibaldi in Italy and Otto von Bismarck in Germany harnessed nationalist sentiment to forge unified nations out of previously divided regions. And this wave of nationalism reshaped the political map of Europe, but it also set the stage for future conflicts. One of the defining characteristics of nationalism is that it can take different forms depending on historical and political contexts. There is civic nationalism, which is based on shared political values and institutions rather than ethnicity or culture. Countries like the United States and France have traditionally embraced civic nationalism, where national identity is tied to ideas of democracy, freedom, and citizenship rather than ethnic heritage. Then there's ethnic nationalism, which defines national identity based on shared ancestry, language, or culture. And this form of nationalism has played a major role in shaping the politics of countries like Germany, Japan, and Hungary at various points in history. While it can foster a strong sense of unity and belonging, ethnic nationalism has also been used to exclude or marginalize certain groups, sometimes with devastating consequences. Nationalism has played a dual role in history. It's been a force for liberation and self-determination, but also a driver of conflict and division. On the one hand, nationalism has inspired independence movements across the world. In the 19th and 20th centuries, many nations fought for their freedom from colonial rule under the banner of nationalism. Countries like India, Algeria, and Vietnam used nationalist movements to mobilize resistance against European imperial powers. For these movements, nationalism was about reclaiming sovereignty and establishing self-rule. On the other hand, nationalism has also been at the heart of some of the most destructive conflicts in history. The aggressive nationalism of the early 20th century contributed to the outbreak of World War I, as competing national ambitions and rivalries escalated into a global conflict. In the 1930s and 40s, extreme nationalist ideologies, particularly in Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, fueled expansionist aggression, leading to World War II. These regimes used nationalism to justify territorial conquest, but also racial supremacy and militarism, with catastrophic consequences. In the post-war era, nationalism did not disappear, it simply evolved. During the Cold War, nationalist movements played a crucial role in shaping world politics. In Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, nationalist struggles led to the end of European colonial empires, resulting in the creation of dozens of new nation-states. At the same time, nationalism became a tool for political leaders to consolidate power, sometimes leading to authoritarianism and ethnic conflicts. In recent decades, nationalism has resurged in different forms across the world. In Europe and the United States, nationalist movements have often been linked to populism, emphasizing sovereignty, border control, and resistance to globalization. The Brexit movement in the UK, for example, was driven in part by nationalist sentiment, with calls to take back control from the European Union. In the United States, nationalist rhetoric has been a defining feature of political discourse, often centered around the idea of America first. Elsewhere, nationalism has been a key factor in territorial disputes and political conflicts. China's nationalist rhetoric has played a role in its policies toward Taiwan and the South China Sea. Russia has used nationalism to justify its actions in Ukraine, framing its interventions as efforts to protect Russian-speaking populations. In countries like India and Turkey, nationalism has been used by political leaders to rally support and consolidate power, sometimes at the expense of minority groups and democratic institutions. But nationalism is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool that can be used in different ways, depending on the political context. It can inspire people to fight for their rights, but it can also be used to justify exclusion, aggression, and authoritarianism. The key question is how nationalism is directed. Does it promote unity and inclusion, or does it create division and conflict? One of the ongoing debates about nationalism is its relationship with globalization. In an interconnected world where economies, cultures, and technologies are more intertwined than ever, nationalist movements often push back against global integration. And this can take the form of economic protectionism, stricter immigration policies, or opposition to international organizations. Some argue that nationalism is necessary to preserve national identity and sovereignty. Others warn that excessive nationalism can lead to isolationism and conflict. So what does the future of nationalism look like? As long as people identify with nations, nationalism will remain a powerful force in politics. It will continue to shape elections, international relations, and social movements. The challenge for modern societies is to find a balance, one that allows for national pride and self-determination without falling into the traps of exclusion, intolerance, or aggression. Nationalism is one of the most influential forces in history, and its impact is still felt today. Understanding it is essential to making sense of the world we live in. It's neither inherently good nor inherently bad, as I said. It's how it is used that determines the consequences. So thank you for joining me today on Outside Views Politics 101. And if you found this exploration of nationalism insightful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, share your thoughts in the comments below the video. This is Outside Views Politics 101, and I look forward to seeing you next time as we explore another defining issue in global politics. And I'll see you in the next video. The next one is right here in the end screen.